It's K8BYP on the HVAC heat pump topic. We went on vacation, came back a couple days later. Units had been turned off. Everything had gotten nice and hot at 90 degrees, and the mold took off like crazy. So the house smelled like mold inside. When I restored this house, I stripped it down to bare walls, floors, and ceilings and bombed it with chlorine bleach to kill the mold. Trim all cleaned, everything painted, floors painted with kills, no mold. But these older package units outside have collected mold over the years, and the source of that mold is leaking seals. This is the side cover that goes over the indoor coil compartment, and that's where, here on the suction side, this is on the inlet to the indoor fan, and this is the low pressure side, and all it takes is a small gap between these old seals and this stamped thin flexible metal cabinet to just sit here hour after hour and suck in molds and dirt from around. And this is why a unit like this should be elevated a considerable distance above the ground. Now, what's necessary to clean this is opening this compartment, for example. That's where the air comes in from the house. That's the return air. And take your cheap washcloth and a pan of water and a spray bottle. I use about 10-to-1 chlorine bleach solution in water. Also need a garden hose. Turn the power off to the unit. If it just ran, let it sit for at least a half hour for the start capacitor to discharge, because you'll access the start capacitor through the front cover of this unit in particular. When taking out the worst offender, which is the indoor fan, can't quite see it back in there. In the other unit, that fan compartment was black with mold, and that was the source of the mold smell in the house. And it's probably in this one also. I found brown mold in here. So what must be done is take these covers off first with a cloth. It is not good enough just to spray bleach solution in here, but it must be wiped, cleaned, rubbed mechanically to clean the mold off. The foil, the seals, everything. Same in this compartment, same in the blower compartment. Floor, sides, and ceiling of these compartments, and back in there. Notice it's a round return line, but it's a D-shaped opening, and there was a bunch of brown mold hiding up above that opening on the inside. So it must literally scrub every inch of this with chlorine bleach. And the trick here is, once this has been used to clean, don't put it back in the chlorine bleach water. It'll immediately contaminate it. What's necessary is to hold it up against the wall and take the garden hose with your thumb over the end and spray it, high pressure spray, to blow the old mold out of the cloth. Otherwise, you're just putting it right back in, and the first dip in the water after is going to ruin the water. And it takes it'll probably take a half gallon of chlorine bleach solution to do this. Also, wipe down very carefully the face of the indoor coil. Very gently brush downwards with the cloth, and be careful. These sheet metal pieces are very sharp. They can cut you badly. In this compartment, I've covered up the old insulation with new foil-faced foam and tape. So there's probably some mold hiding under that. But get everything, every square inch of that compartment inside. Over here with the lines, be extremely careful not to move them or bend them, but carefully wiping them down with a chlorine bleach soaked rag as much as you can reach. For the condensate tray, get our friend the dryer lint cleaner and wrap the cloth around it like this, like that, and wrap it up. And that lint tool will catch the hooks on this cloth. Wrap it around so it's stuck on there. And wet that with chlorine bleach water, and very carefully reach it back in there, down inside that tray, back and forth. And especially down in here where the drain is. Now to get way back in there where we can't see, we got to take the fan compartment cover off, and this is for the Train XL14. Your package might be different. But to access the far end of that condensate drain tray, I had to take out the fan pod and then reach back in with just the washcloth and clean that out. Also spray the evaporator fins with heavy bleach solution. And when the system's restarted, that's going to smell the house up of chlorine, but that'll go away where mold won't. And be sure that if you have to walk away for a minute, put the cover back over the opening so mouse or bird or squirrel don't get inside. Because if they especially get in on the outlet side, you've got a real problem. Because now there'll be a live animal running loose in the ductwork. And when it dies, it's going to stink like you know what. I've just cleaned this compartment. I'm letting it air out. I'm also going to spray the evaporator again. And it'll take about an hour to clean this compartment. You may want to use this to clean the ceiling of this compartment because it's difficult to reach back in there and reach that on top. But if necessary, if you have to, rip the foil insulation out of this compartment and replace it with this foam board. And I used duct tape. I should have used aluminum foil tape. Now when this compartment's clean and mostly aired out, put the door back on. Then seal the door perimeter with this aluminum tape. This is aluminum HVAC duct tape, but it must be sealed all the way around. This is the other package unit on the other end of the house. And here's the blower compartment. And what I found is that there was a leak up here because the wiring just inside had dirt and mold on it, and also leaking significantly down here. So that prevents that. On this unit, this is electric E-heat, and cold air was absolutely pouring out of these vent louvers. Those vent louvers are there in case there's a gas package unit for backup heat. There isn't. So I covered them and covered that one. Since that's exposed to the indoor air, there's no need to have those open for ventilation. There's more humidity outside than there is inside because the air conditioning also takes humidity out of the indoor air. If your unit has a gas package with a gas line going to it in the summer when the gas is not being used, yes, you can cover those over, but do not try to restart the gas unit in the fall if those are covered, because that'll starve the flame for air and may overheat the compartment. Now going inside the indoor coil compartment, we go in here and see the return sheet metal. That's the sheet metal from the return ducting inside. It comes through that tunnel back there and through the drive coupling and into this plastic flexi duct. And you can see brown. It doesn't show real well without the camera, but that brown is dirt and mold. So what I used was the dryer cleaning thing, again with the cloth wrapped around it. And make sure the cloth covers the end so the bristles don't puncture the plastic. That plastic's not very thick. You see the nasty stuff that came out. And that's mostly just cleaning on the surface of the convoluted material. That's not really down in the crevices. So that needs to be taken off and cleaned again with a high pressure hose. Even if condensate water is coming out, it's very likely that that drain is plugged. And this one was. It was plugged about that high up. That lets debris build up in here. So if you see trash laying in here, it's probably because that drain's plugged. So take that off and blow it through with the hose and run the dryer cleaning brush through that to clean it out. And I ran the brush through that, and there's the trash that came out of it. It was about a third of the way plugged up. Now here's the access door to the blower compartment. And notice, hazardous voltage. Fan motor runs off 230. There's a start capacitor in there that if it's charged and your hands are wet, it can kill you. See the mold patches? That's before. And that's after. And there's the nasty, dirty results. And see, there's a leak here. See the dirty? And dirt's running down along here. That's the bottom. And the bottom is not particularly well sealed, except for that material right there. So that's why the outside has to be taped all the way around afterwards. Now the ugly story is in here. And there's the nasty black mold all over the blower compartment. And that blower pod comes out, gets disassembled and cleaned back to nice clean gray. There's the motor start capacitor. The idiots at Trane did not cover the terminals. That's a dangerous piece there. That can hold a tremendous charge and is extremely dangerous, especially if your hands are wet. Here's the source of the nasty. The blower housing, absolutely filthy. It should be lighter gray than over there. The squirrel cage blower was stuck on the shaft with rust. So instead of beating on it, risking breaking that housing, I used a 7/16 ratchet to loosen that pinch clamp there and take 2 of those mounting legs out and then remove the housing from around it. Now this squirrel cage needs to come off and have the blades cleaned. You can probably see the nasty stuff inside on the blades. So this is out in the yard with a rag and bleach and plenty of water and clean both those housings up. Don't spray any water in the motor. Inside, hot day, listening to a little bit of EWF. Cleaning this squirrel cage without slicing your fingers to ribbons. I've been using a cloth up underneath the fingers. That doesn't work very well. What seems to work a little better is toothbrush dipped in Clorox water. Shake it off a couple times. Carefully put it up underneath like this and angle it so it's up inside there with the handle tipped down. And without snagging it on the sharp end of that fin, brush it back and forth. Now the trouble with the toothbrush is it's not going to bring all the stuff out. It'll scrape it loose better than a cloth, but the cloth does better in taking out what's loosened. So take it out. Don't dip it back in the Clorox water because that'll just contaminate it. Rinse it off with clean water, shake it off, and back in the chlorine bleach water. Now the reason I'm doing it like this instead of taking the squirrel cage off is because this one is rusted on and won't budge. So pretty much no other way to do it without wasting a bunch of time trying to disassemble the motor and still not be able to get the squirrel cage off. And after putting the fan assembly in a wash sink and very carefully with a small cup running water down the fins but not in the motor and spinning it off and blotting it dry, the parts are sitting outside to evaporate. Positively don't get that fan wet and put it back in the unit. That'll be the end of it, because the water will eat through the galvanized and rust it and you're done. So the sun exposure will help kill the sun, and the fresh air, hot air, will help kill remaining mold. Now with the fan components out here baking, and it's hotter than the devil out here, but go inside these compartments and block off the inlet. I've stuffed a big sheet back inside there to mostly block that in case something gets past the foam board. It might get tangled up in the cotton. But a piece of foam board propped up with bricks. And the fan compartment open. And the outlet side where the unhappy wasp got evicted from its home. But here's where the other reservoir of mold was. A lot of it was on that face back in there. But all this has to be wiped out. And see, I've got a piece of foam board stuck in there over the outlet with a brick down there to keep a gap closed so that critters can't get in. And I know more than said earlier to cover these openings so animals don't get in. I took a couple steps and turned around and our cat came running out of the fan compartment. So she could have easily gotten into ductwork. That would have been a mess. But all this has to be cleaned with bleach water, allowed to dry. And see the trash on the floor there. Now when that's done with this compartment open, had to open this compartment to disconnect the wires to rotate this panel out of the way, so it wasn't necessary to disconnect the gas pipe. But once that's done and the fan assembly is put back in, then power can be reconnected temporarily and run the fan, and that will draft a lot of air through the block off the coils there. And that'll draw a lot of fresh air through the indoor coil. Then that can be sprayed with chlorine bleach. The airflow will draw it through the fins and kill mold in there, but it will evacuate the bleach so the house doesn't smell like bleach for 3 days. Now the covers are on. You can probably hear the fan running. I can feel the air ducting, and I'm going to spray chlorine bleach in there. A little lighter spray than that. Because the airflow will pack that mold and stuff in there. There. Yeah. So the indoor fan is running, but it's drawing air through here, mostly. So we block that off. And you can see the suction is holding it in place. So that means there's suction. That's on the suction side. And now you can hear the airflow, the air restriction. I'm going to put a little bit of tape over that. It covers over the fan compartment, and the outlet cover is open. And that will, nice airflow through there. So that will air out that compartment. Avoid spraying water on those tubes. See the tubes part of the gas unit. That's the heat exchanger. Avoid spraying a lot of water on them. There's a piece of foam board covering the electrical compartment so the cat can't get in there. I'm standing back here, it's blowing my hair around, so good airflow. So that'll blow mold and stuff out of there without blowing the chlorine bleach through the house. And that's about as annoying as the mold. But spray it down, spray, and let it draw.